In all situations, when wanting to make a professional and serious impression, the basic tools of formal writing should be included. Writing a formal text might seem difficult at first, but anyone could produce a proper formal text if knowing the right tricks for it. This film will present how to write 3 different types of formal texts: competition entries, reviews, and essays, in a way that is clean, professional, and polished. Firstly, it is important to know the basics of formal writing, seeing as all types of formal texts have a couple of general similarities. The main rule when writing formally is to never use personal pronouns such as you or I. For example, instead of writing, "I would recommend you to try out this restaurant," which contains personal pronouns that make the phrase seem informal, it is better to rephrase the sentence like this: "This restaurant is highly recommended to try out." However, in certain situations or types of texts, it might be impossible to completely avoid personal pronouns, in which case it is accepted to a certain extent.
Another thing that is highly prohibited is the use of contractions and shortenings of sentences, such as can't, wasn't, and I'm, and OMG, ASAP, and DOI. Use instead the correct words and write entire sentences. For instance, refrain from writing sentences like, "I can't believe we aren't done with this manuscript yet. We have to get it done ASAP." Phrase it instead, "It is incredible, this manuscript is not yet finished. It must be completed as soon as possible," which will add a more formal feeling to the entire text.
Furthermore, refrain from using slang and other kinds of informal vocabulary. As an example, do not write, "Newton was an awesome dude who made up all this cool stuff." Instead, it is better to write, "Newton was an important man who contributed to science in many ways." This way of writing is more formal and conveys a more professional impression.
Pop cultural references should be avoided as well. For example, references such as "Elisabeth used to work on her English assignment, but then she took an arrow to the knee" should not be used. Even though many may understand this reference, there is still a large majority that does not. Since the idea of a formal text is to make it clear and easy to understand for everyone, all forms of references should be avoided, because they close off a part of the possible readers. If a reference must be used in a more relaxed type of text, be certain that all in the targeted audience will understand it.
In addition, almost all types of formal text consist of an introduction, a body part, and a conclusion. The introduction should be the first paragraph of the text, and is supposed to give an insight to what the text will be about, and at the same time catch the reader's interest, in order to make him or her want to continue reading. This can be done by using, for example, an interesting fact, a strong statement, or a question. To illustrate this, a formal introduction could be, "Not too long ago, computers were a rarity, and the websites on the internet were solely for necessary purposes. Today, the website called Facebook has developed far beyond the first websites. It is not only a popular social network, it has become a way of life." Notice how the reader's interest is caught by making the strong statement that Facebook is a way of life, which makes the reader eager to continue reading in order to find out what the writer means by this. The introduction is important since it is often what decides the success of the text, as it sets the tone and the expectations on the rest of the text.
Then comes the body part, which is the main text, where the topic of the text is elaborated and discussed. This is the part where the writer presents the facts and opinions on the topic and discusses it. The body part should be separated into paragraphs according to what is discussed at the moment. In other words, when there is something new discussed in the body part, there should be a new paragraph as well. This helps the reader follow the train of thought of the writer. Furthermore, in order to further guide the reader through the text, there should be a frequent usage of linking words. These are words such as firstly, lastly, furthermore, in addition, in comparison, in conclusion, and so on. These words will help maintain the red thread of the text, which enhances the professional impression.
Lastly, there should be a conclusion of what has been brought up in the body part of the text, and perhaps, if there were a question in the introduction, an answer to that question. A conclusion to a statement introduced in the introduction may be, due to all of these aspects, it is quite obvious that Facebook is now not only a web-based meeting place, but also a vital part of most personal and professional life. This should be done in the last paragraph, where all the facts and opinions of the text are summed up and concluded. It is important to have some sort of conclusion of what is written in the text, as it might otherwise feel a bit unnecessary for the reader to have read the text.
The first type of text that will be explained how to write is a competition entry. This might be helpful when wanting to enter a contest. The text in a competition entry does not need to be overly formal, although it is vital to remember who the directed audience is. A competition entry is a formal text where it is allowed to be a bit more familiar with the audience than other types of formal text, as long as the language is formal and the text is properly written. It is therefore possible to use questions and shorter sentences in order to keep the reader's interest. As an example, it might be permitted to write, "People in modern societies were completely dependent on technology." That makes one wonder, how did our grandparents cope without computers? This way of writing feels more personal to the reader, and therefore will inspire the reader to continue reading the text. In order to make a lasting impression, it is important to have an intriguing introduction, which might be achieved, as similar to previously mentioned, by using questions. The lively tone which is set in the introduction should remain throughout the entire text. The general feeling created in addition to use of lingo words will make it easy to follow the arguments without the reader losing interest.
The second type of text that will be explained is reviews. This is a form of text where it is allowed to be a bit more informal, since the main goal is to express a personal opinion. It is because of that all right to use personal pronouns to a certain extent, in order to get a point across and to make it clear that what is written is opinions and not facts. Furthermore, it is beneficial if the review contains both praise and criticism, in order to appear objective and professional. The praise and the criticism should be well blended with each other to make the text fluent. In order to create a clear picture in the reader's mind, it is a must to give a concise description of the object of the review. Keep in mind that an extensive and proper use of adjectives will also bring forth an opinion without any personal pronouns being used. For example, instead of saying, "I think that this movie feels poorly made and impersonal," it is better to simply say, "This movie feels poorly made and impersonal," since the reader already knows from the context that this is the writer's opinion, and therefore it is unnecessary to state that obvious fact. The concluding recommendation should be saved for the final paragraph in order to make a lasting impression and to make it clear what your conclusion is.
The last of three types of text presented is essays. This text is more strict than the previous types of text. There should not be any personal pronouns present in the text. Moreover, the language should be properly adapted to the audience. Similarly to previous types of text, an essay should begin with an introduction that catches the reader's interest and shortly states what the text will be about. Often when writing an essay, since it should be very strict, it is better to use a statement or a fact rather than a question in the introduction. In addition, when writing an essay based on a given task that includes a question which the essay should discuss, it is a good idea to rephrase the question in the introduction to avoid repeating the task, but still stating that the text will be about the given topic. For example, if there is a task of writing an essay that says, "What effect does lack of sleep have on adolescents' studies?" then it is beneficial to rephrase the question to, "Lack of sleep may therefore lead to dire consequences when it comes to adolescent studies." The rephrased sentence can after that be used in the end of this introduction and thus work as a thesis statement, which is supposed to summarize the subject of the essay in one single sentence.
In the body part, where the matter is discussed, there should be ideas and examples that either supports both sides of the argument or only one of the sides, depending on the essay task. Remember to always explain why the arguments and opinions presented are logical and relevant. And as always, do not forget to structure the essay into paragraphs according to the content and to use linking words to develop the arguments clearly and logically. Finally, there should be a clear conclusion where the arguments of the essay are summed up to come to a conclusion on the matter given in the task. This is especially important when writing an essay, seeing as it is an analyzing text.
In summary, it is always good to try to include the basic principles of formal writing in all formal text. The basic principle of formal writing consists of divided paragraphs, which always have an introduction in the beginning and a conclusion in the end, a narrow use of personal pronouns, and the use of a more academic vocabulary. Linking words should also be used to an extent in order to lead the reader throughout the text. If problems still occurs, it might be beneficial to take a break from text and then read it through it once more with objective eyes. This will make it easy to correct minor grammatical errors and rewrite parts that may have come across too informal during the first draft. The most important parts of form writing have now been presented during this video, and we are confident that you are all now capable of writing a perfect essay, competition entry, and review.